Hi, this is Dr. Kraus, and I'm recording a series of videos to promote my online summer course, Integrated Mechatronic Systems, ME 492, ECE 492, ME 592. This summer will be the first time that that's offered. We're going to use Raspberry Pi to create cool devices and do some projects and learn how to install the OS, learn a little bit of Python, and then kind of figure out what extra stuff we want to do from there. Um, So we are going to just install the operating system. You got to kind of do those things. Learn some basic Linux networking tools, SSH and VNC, to connect to the Raspberry Pi remotely. Learn how to install software, that kind of thing. And you can program a Raspberry Pi in C, but it really was kind of built around Python. So we're going to learn some Python. I assume that students don't know Python going in. I assume that you don't really know much, if anything, about the Raspberry Pi going in. And so we're starting from zero and kind of building up to there. And then there'll be some required modules. Like I said, the basic Raspberry Pi stuff is required. You'll either have to do the Python stuff or kind of test out of the Python stuff. But then there will be some other topics that you can choose on your own, and you'll have some number of topics total that you have to complete. We could do data acquisition stuff, feedback control, sensors, actuators, those kind of things. So the biggest questions I'm getting is can I still take this course if I don't know anything about the Raspberry Pi or I don't know anything about Python? And I think the answer to both those questions is yes. That's actually the next slide. So what do I think of as the actual prerequisites for the course? I assume that you've taken CS 140 or 145. I assume that you've probably forgotten most of that, but that you know enough programming to know the basics of what are some programming concepts: for loops, while loops, if then, defining functions, those sort of things. You don't necessarily know the syntax, but you know how to build a program based on typical structure. So mainly I'm looking for a willingness to learn to program better. I think this is a valuable job skill no matter where you ultimately end up. An engineer who knows how to code at least reasonably well is in a much more powerful position for their own future career. For the mechanical engineers, I'd expect to see dynamics at a minimum. I'd kind of like to see ME 354 and 356. I think that lets us start to do some dynamic systems and experimental system identification and maybe the beginnings of feedback control. And so I'm willing to negotiate on that. 354 and 356 together would be great. Anything beyond that would just be gravy. For the ECEs, I'd like to see systems and signals again, somewhat willing to negotiate as long as I saw a significant willingness to grow as a programmer and wanting to learn about Raspberry Pi stuff. Like I said, the two biggest questions I'm getting: I don't know anything about Raspberry Pi, I don't know anything about Python. Should I still consider taking this course? And I think the answer to that is yes, provided you have willingness to learn both of those things. So, like I said, I'm not expecting you to know Python, but I do expect that you have an interest in learning it. If you don't know Python and you don't want to learn it, then this is definitely not the course for you. Similarly, I don't expect most of the students to have had significant exposure to Raspberry Pi, but if you're excited about it and want to learn about what this cool little mini computer can do, then this is the course for you. If you don't know anything about Raspberry Pi and you don't want to learn about Raspberry Pi, I mean, it's in the title of the course, so you kind of had to see that coming. So my main questions for you: do you have an interest in something related to mechatronics, automation, robotics, or controls, where the Raspberry Pi could do some cool thing in your life to automate something that's been bugging you for a while, or create some new device, or add intelligence to some device that already exists, or whatever? Are you willing to learn how to do those kind of things? And do you recognize that even if you don't want to major in computer science, I mean, you're probably juniors and seniors, you're not going to change your major at this point, but you do recognize that engineers need to know how to at least do a minimal amount of coding, and learning to do that better can be a very valuable job skill. This is going to be an online course. It is going to be, I think, an 8-week online course, so it's kind of double time-ish. I'll hope to have the materials up. So I'd like to have everybody, before the end of spring semester, have a functioning Raspberry Pi with the operating system installed so that we can work out those questions before you potentially go home for the summer. Certainly, I will be in town most of the time, and I will have some on-campus debugging sessions in my lab. If you're just stuck on your project and you just need to come ask me questions, I'll be around. But I also want this to be a class that you can take entirely remotely. I already had one student who plans to be in Europe for the summer. Yes, you can still take the course as long as you can get reasonable Wi-Fi And as long as you can play with a Raspberry Pi, you can do this anywhere. And I'll make myself available through Google Chat, Google Hangouts, or the university pays for something called Zoom that would allow me to do video chatting for virtual office hours, those kind of things. So, because it's double time, a 3-credit course is 6 hours of just lecture per week, and then university policy says expect to do 2 hours outside of class for every lecture hour. So expect 12 hours of outside of class work. So altogether, we're talking 18 to 20-ish hours of watching videos and working on projects. As long as you can do that, then I think you can fit this course in, and obviously you can fit that around your own personal schedule, whatever. You could binge watch my videos if you wanted to, I guess. But I also expect by the end, there'll be some quizzes and tests and a little bit of homework and something to kind of keep you on track throughout. I haven't worked out all the details of that yet. But the kind of big thing will be at the end of the semester, can you make a cool, functioning Raspberry Pi project and present me some kind of video presentation / demo of your project, and that'll be your big final grade. As I mentioned, I will have optional on-campus debugging sessions, but I do want you to be able to take the entire course remotely. And I will have virtual office hours to try to support that as much as I can. There will be some modules that will be basic, that will be required for everybody, and then some that will be kind of a choose-your-own-adventure format, whatever things are more interesting to you. And specifically for graduate students, they'll be expected to take a certain number of more advanced modules. Thanks.